Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Martyn Lucas Investor Undercover today with Bitcoin. Tap the like button, share this out. Major interview with a major story you all need to know. Tap the like button right now. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Martyn Lucas Investor Investigates, a special new series where I interview people with great insight, great connections, great ideas, great journalism skills. We then put them in touch with Sensei, put the whole thing together in our newsletter, and dig deep. Go deep, deep, deep undercover, as one famous Hollywood actor would say. So over the weekend, we've put together a story for you, which I think you're going to find very interesting. It's all about Bitcoin. This stuff here, thank you, Ray Smith, for becoming a subscriber. Bitcoin, it's a big deal, right? Everyone's talking about it. The new digital gold. But what does it mean to you? And what if we discovered $60 billion of Bitcoin sitting around and we decided to pick it up? What do we do with it? Where would it go? How would it affect you? The new digital gold? People say it is, but it's in the balance now. The Fed is in the balance. With all this debt we have, can you imagine if we could seize $60 billion of Bitcoin and then put it on the Federal Reserve and pay all the national debt off? What happens then? Do you own all the debt because it got pumped and dumped? What happens? Well, we're going to discuss that story. We're going to provide you with the evidence, look at the charts of that, and see if it's about to be locked away in the vaults of the Fed and then sold. What comes next? Well, this is like the glory days of the gold rush. The cowboys are out. Literally, we've been fighting over this stuff recently. We'll share it with you in a moment. But before you do the gold dance and celebrate, what happens if and why? And remember, don't do anything until the music stops. And the music has just stopped. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to our special undercover event with Bitcoin. We've got lots to share with you. It's a 35 to 40 minute event with a star guest. You've met her before. You know who she is. We've been introducing you to her over the last couple of weeks. Of course, it's our Casey. She's with us this morning and she's live on the phone now. I'm going to bring her in and welcome Casey to the show. Good morning, Casey. How are you?
Good morning, Martin. I'm great. How are you?
Well, I am very well. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I know you've been working tirelessly with Sensei over the weekend, compiling all what you know, put it together, doing some great journalism and investigation work. Sensei's compiled it in our newsletter. I'm now going to read from the newsletter, and you can jump in at any point if you wish to talk over it. Then I'll come back to you, and then we can discuss it backwards and forwards. But thank you for bringing this to our attention. This is a massive story, and I know you've got lots to share with the viewers. So let's get into the newsletter. Stand by. Perfect. Here we go. Thank you, Casey. So here we go. We start off with this. Now, if you'd like to read along with our newsletter, there is the link in the chat. You can get 60% off at the moment, and you can read along the show notes of our newsletter. So let's start. 60 billion in Bitcoin is suddenly on the table. How a collapsed regime, US case law, and the strategic Bitcoin reserve changed what seized supply actually means for the markets. For most of the last decade, Venezuela has been discussed as a humanitarian collapse and a sanctions case. That framing misses the part that now matters for markets. Venezuela has become one of the clearest modern examples of what happens when a government loses legal legitimacy and how far courts are willing to go once that loss is established. This matters because once legitimacy collapses, the protections that normally surround state assets weaken. That process has already played out with oil. Bitcoin is now being pulled into the same legal gravity. How the courts changed the rules. Now, you might want to pause at this point so you can come back and look at all this detail. As you can see, we go from Crystal X award into US courts to alter ego finding, and then that equals political legitimacy equals legal fact, sovereign immunity, and so it goes on. You can pause this and take a closer look at this. This was provided by Sensei and Casey, doing some great research over the weekend. Let me continue. The legal shift began with Crystal X after Venezuela expropriated a Canadian mining company's gold project. An international arbitration tribunal awarded damages. Venezuela refused to pay. That refusal triggered enforcement in US courts. What followed was not a symbolic ruling. US courts confirmed the arbitration award and then examined whether Venezuela's state oil company, PDVSA, was genuinely separate from the state itself. After years of litigation, appeals, and evidentiary review, courts concluded it was not. PDVSA was treated as the alter ego of Venezuela. That finding allowed creditors to reach PDVSA's US assets, including the holding company that owns Citgo. Crucially, US courts also treated political legitimacy as a Venezuelan legitimate leader. That recognition flowed directly into asset control. Once the regime was deemed illegitimate, corporate shields stopped working. The result was simple and consequential. Sovereign immunity was pierced. Assets that once appeared untouchable became reachable through ordinary enforcement mechanisms. The criminal layer running in parallel. Alongside the civil enforcement cases, prosecutors were building a criminal case. The Maduro and senior figures in his government of operating a long-running narco-terrorism conspiracy. The allegations span more than 2 decades and describe the use of state institutions to protect drug trafficking networks and move cocaine into the United States. For markets, the most important part of that indictment is not the narrative, but the forfeiture authority. The indictment includes provisions allowing the government to seek seizure of assets derived from criminal proceeds. It also includes substitute asset language. If specific proceeds cannot be located, prosecutors are authorized to pursue other property of equal value. And now that matters because forfeiture law does not distinguish between asset types. If digital assets were used to store or move value tied to criminal conduct, they fall within reach once custody or access can be established. Venezuela and crypto before the headlines. Have a look at this picture here. Venezuela's cryptocurrency activity and the scale question.
I can't believe this.
We've got a new member.
At Lucid Fires has become a member. XRP is going to swallow BTC.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. It's a live show. You can interact with the show, leave me your thoughts on the show and take part in it just like that. Thank you very much indeed. So there you can see documented survival tactics and what remains unproven scale. You might like to pause the screen and take a closer look at this after the live stream is over. Venezuela's interaction with cryptocurrency is documented. The regime launched the Petro. It tolerated and later raided Bitcoin mining operations. It used stable coins to settle oil transactions when sanctions tightened. These were not theoretical experiments. They were survival tactics. What remains unproven is scale. On-chain analysis confirms that Venezuela directly controls only a small amount of Bitcoin, on the order of a few hundred Bitcoin. That figure is verifiable and insignificant from a market perspective. The claims that have driven speculation are far larger. Some reports and analyst commentary suggest that Maduro regime may have accumulated between 600,000 and 660,000 Bitcoin over several years through laundering of oil proceeds, gold sales, mining activity, and stablecoin conversions. At prices nearly 90,000 per Bitcoin, that range implies roughly 55 billion to 61 billion. There is no public blockchain evidence confirming those numbers. No major analytics firm has identified wallet clusters of that size tied to the Venezuelan state. These figures remain unverified. Markets, however, do not require proof to care about upper bounds. How much Bitcoin is actually in play? Once again, you might like to pause the video, take a shot of that and read that and take a look at that at your own leisure. You might like to have that as a screensaver. That's how we prepared these so you can use them for your own benefit. Now, all this information is provided by sources that were put together by Casey. We're about to talk to her in a moment, and compiled with Sensei from our newsletter. There is the newsletter in the chat, and in a moment, we'll discuss all these points live with Casey on the show. 600,000 Bitcoin represents close to 3% of the total 21 million supply. It is larger than the holdings of any corporate treasury. It is roughly twice the size of the United States' current Bitcoin holdings. Even partial scenarios matter. If only 100,000 to 200,000 Bitcoin existed and were recoverable, that would still represent supply comparable to multiple quarters of ETF inflows. In a market that increasingly trades on marginal supply, that scale cannot be ignored. What matters is not whether the maximum number is true, but whether enough Bitcoin exists to alter supply dynamics if custody changes. The strategic Bitcoin reserve changes the outcome. Historically, seized Bitcoin was sold. Auctions were held and coins re-entered circulation. That assumption no longer holds. In March 2025, the United States established a strategic Bitcoin reserve funded by finally forfeited Bitcoin. Under this policy, seized Bitcoin is transferred into Treasury custody and held, not auctioned, unless a court orders liquidation or the assets are required for restitution or law enforcement use. As of early 2026, the United States is estimated to hold between 325,000 and 328,000 Bitcoin from prior seizures. This is roughly 1.5% of total supply, with a market value exceeding 30 billion. This policy shift matters because it flips the market impact of seizure. Instead of creating selling pressure, forfeiture can now remove supply from circulation. What happens if Venezuelan Bitcoin is found? There are only a few realistic paths. If no meaningful Bitcoin exists, the story fades with no market impact. If Bitcoin exists but cannot be accessed because keys are lost or held outside recoverable custody, those coins are effectively removed from circulation. From a supply perspective, that is bullish. If Bitcoin exists and is recovered through custodians, exchanges, or cooperation, forfeiture becomes possible. Under current policy, those coins would likely be transferred into the strategic Bitcoin reserve rather than sold. The only clearly bearish outcome would be forced liquidation ordered by a court. Even then, any sale would almost certainly be structured through OTC channels rather than open market dumping. Why this matters for Bitcoin now, once again, one of our great images here provided by Casey and Sensei. You might once again like to pause that. I'm not going to go into all the detail of the image. I want to keep it flowing. You can pause it, have a look at that and read it for yourself on the big screen. I think it's just better to move on. You all got it? Okay. That is not a Venezuela story at its core. It's a Bitcoin custody story. Courts have shown they will pierce sovereign shields when legitimacy collapses. Prosecutors have built cases that authorize broad forfeiture. Policy has shifted, so seized Bitcoin is no longer actually sold. At the same time, the quantities being discussed are large enough to matter, even if the probability of full recovery is low. Bitcoin is no longer just trading on adoption narratives. It is trading on who ends up holding it, who cannot sell it, and how much supply quietly disappears from circulation. This is why markets are paying attention. Underneath all of that, we provide you all the sources that we went to put this together. It was provided by Sensei and Casey. I've now got Casey live with me on the show. We're going to discuss all of that and what this truly means. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring BTC up on the screen like this, and we're going to keep our eye on it as we bring it to the 5-year. And I'm going to bring Casey into the show where we watch Bitcoin and see what happens during the show. So Casey, I'm back on the screen now. Thank you so much indeed. You just have your microphone muted, I believe. If you could unmute yourself, that would be awesome. Thank you for providing this information with Sensei and compiling it. What a story that you've uncovered.
Absolutely.
Blimey. Tell me more about it and what your thoughts are behind this and how you stumbled on all this and what's your connection with all this?
So I've been looking at Venezuela and the event unfolding there. I have a background in politics and international relations, so it just piques my interest all the time. So I stay up on this stuff. And one of the things that I saw people talking about was this possible shadow reserve that cannot be verified on chain. But I think that a lot of people are missing that there has been legal precedent set leading up to this in the Crystalex cases that you were talking about. There's been legal precedent set that means that we can, as the United States, the government can now seize Bitcoin, because even if it wasn't run through state entities or custodied by state entities, state wallets. And the reason they can do that now is because of the alter ego ruling that came out of those Crystalex cases. Now, some company operating as the state is going to be considered the same as the state in legal seizures. And so even if there is Bitcoin not in state custodied wallets, but wallets that can be tied back to the state, that would fall under this alter ego seizure. And I also think that there's a lot, there's so many layers with Venezuela, just if you look at the geopolitical landscape. But this entire case really lines up with, if you look back at President Trump's national security strategy that was published in 2025, November of 2025, Western Hemisphere security is what was, is the biggest focus. It emphasized that there's a great power competition and restoration of sovereignty and dismantling illegitimate regimes is a priority. And so this ties all of those geopolitical pieces together. We've got energy, right? We've got sovereignty that is being pierced. And we've also got now digital assets on the line that don't have a lot of clarity on the legal front.
This is a fascinating story, and thank you again for bringing it to us. So what do you think the likelihood of discovering this and then seizing it? And then where would it end up? Do you think it will go into the Federal Reserve? Do you think that's the path?
I think if there is a large shadow reserve discovered, it will absolutely go into the reserve, because that's what was changed. I think the newsletter said that. also is that's what was changed under Trump. Before, we would sell off those assets when they were seized. Now,
Yeah.
the strategic Bitcoin reserve established that it wasn't going to be using taxpayer money, right, to
That's
buy
right.
Bitcoin. It was going to be from legal seizures. So it
That's
would be
right.
seized. The likelihood of it being found, I mean, this is where we're in new territory. We're challenged with digital assets. If we can figure out who has the custody, which I believe there's a lot of symbology that happened around this that points to the fact that we probably may already know where a lot of this is. We know that stable coins were being used. We know that there's a lot of missing assets from gold and from oil, and they had to go somewhere. Now it's just about finding out who has custody. And I believe that that's now going to set even more legal precedent for custody and seizure of digital assets. So it tells me that we are moving into a very new monetary system, right? Like we're coming up on major changes, and there isn't a lot of legal clarity around this.
The question is, as many people would probably think about after all this sinks in, if 60 billion thereabouts Bitcoin was discovered and it was funneled into the Federal Reserve, United States Federal Reserve, where do you see the price of Bitcoin going? And how do you think the retail investor or the broader investor of Bitcoin would react to that? What do you think would happen?
Well, if it's put into, whether it's custodied by the United States or we discover that it is being held maybe in shadow wallets, right, by someone, it takes that amount of Bitcoin out of circulation on exchanges. It lessens the supply. So I think that in that case, people start, buying the rumors.
Yes, that's what I think is going to happen. We've been doing our research and we've been digging deeper, and this is a very sensitive subject, and some of our sources remain, are private, our own. But I do believe that this is going to happen. I think you believe this is going to happen, and when it does, and it goes into the U.S. Treasury, and Trump announces they've done this because Trump is bound to want to come out and tell the world about this. Then FOMO would kick in like crazy and off would go Bitcoin. And Trump has always said he would like to hold Bitcoin on the Federal Reserve, but also wants to pay off the debt. So what if it runs up to 250,000 or something like that, and then Trump decides to sell it to pay off all the national debt? What happens then is basically everyone who bought Bitcoin holds the bag and now owns the national debt. What do you think of the chance of that happening?
I think that I honestly don't know. I think that it would be more likely because I do think that Trump is the most supportive. This administration is the most crypto supportive that we have had, and I don't know that he would sell off or they would sell off the debt, but they may borrow against it. So this opens up a whole other can of worms, right? Like they could borrow against it to pay down debt.
Let's remind ourselves, though, of the Trump coin. Trump coin was told by us not as a investment, as a support or a souvenir of the big day of when Trump became president. And we have evidence to support directly from the inauguration dinner. While sat at the table, the Trumps were selling their Trump coin and the Melania coin, and Baron Trump was going to bring one out and he was stopped because it would look too obvious. And 55 wallets took all the profit, where 80,000, I believe was the number, lost money. So we know that Trump is quite happy to pump something, take the profit. It was his profit, his coin, his money, his company, and the rest of us are left holding the bag. Not me, by the way. I didn't buy it at all. But we know his approach is America first and all this thing, and he loves to be winning, loves to be seen to be winning. I can't see personally how Trump would resist being able to be the first president in history to pay off the national debt. Can you imagine America being like in the green, owes no money? How much more profitable are you when you have no debt? I know. I declared myself bankrupt once on purpose. I did it to myself. Didn't have to be. I did it to myself. It was the right thing to do. And from the moment you stop paying interest, your money goes up astronomically because you're not spending money on interest. You're reinvesting it in the business to grow your business. So with the success of America's businesses and economy, if it had no debt and was paying no interest, how much richer would it be? I think the interest payments now is the second or the biggest expense America has. I think it's more than the military. So you'd be really, really well off if you had no debt. Imagine being the president that could say, I've paid off the debt. And now America is like the most profitable business in the world. I can't see Trump resisting that. But remember, it does mean anybody who bought Bitcoin would be holding the bag, though, for this amount of Bitcoin. I guess maybe Trump wouldn't be so bothered if it was a load of Russians or Chinese that owned it all. But of course, a lot of the US citizens like you, me, all of us here, we might own Bitcoin, buy it at 200 grand, and now it's worth 50,000. That's a frightening thought, isn't it?
It is a frightening thought, but I personally I understand what you're saying, but I think that there's more at play, especially if you can borrow against Bitcoin. I personally don't think that President Trump would sell the Bitcoin. I mean, he's said over and over, if you listen to what he says, like, you never sell your Bitcoin, you never sell your Bitcoin.
But he sold his Trump coin.
So, yeah, but it's not Bitcoin. I mean, if it's going into a sovereign wealth fund and he borrows against it to pay down the debt, that would keep control for the long term. That would put America first for the long term, rather than selling it off and then just having it be a one-time thing. I think it's a bigger win for him if he could leverage that and use it. And I mean, he's doing more than just, it would be more than just about the debt. So if that amount of Bitcoin was seized, it would become a strategic digital war chest for the United States. And it could be the first real world legal precedent of digital asset forfeiture that at a state level, at a nation level, under narco-terrorism and sovereignty doctrines. So this pierces that sovereignty too, because it attaches illicit funds from an illegitimate regime. It attaches those assets to anything that the state would then owe in courts.
Fascinating.
So I think that there's bigger strategies going on behind the scenes here. In my personal opinion, I think that this would be a huge win for the United States and for Trump.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the wider perspective on all of this, because I think there's a lot here that we don't understand. And recently, because I've spent 4 years broadcasting and I live and breathe this, and I live in the studio, and I see patterns and I see charts and I see algorithms at play and I see all kinds of things. And I've spent my time building relationships. I know you are a lady of building relationships. You are a networker, and relationships is the most powerful tool because you find out things that might otherwise be lost or missed, and doors open when you make friends with the right people. And I spent 4 years doing that, and I've got some good information that we're moving just down the road from me. There's an exchange being built where we're going to go all on chain, all on Ethereum network, and everything's tokenized and all this kind of stuff. And because of that, I've made some friends with the people that are behind building it. And I've discovered and realized that we are being front run by high frequency traders using AI data centers, fiber optic connections. They know what your buy order is before you kind of know it yourself virtually. And I mean that literally. You might say, well, how do they know what you're going to do before you do it? Well, because they're looking at social media, they're seeing what everyone's saying, doing in a millisecond. And then they see how that correlates with people's buy orders. And they can see patterns forming. And they can front run you and sell it back to you at higher prices. And it's very difficult now for the retail investor who picks up his phone casually sat on the sofa or whatever, to make good decisions based upon a chart or anything like he reads on the news, because it's already happened, it's already passed, the moment's gone, and even if you are within a second, you've just been front run by it anyway. But we are entering a very complex world of digital payments. We like XRP particularly on this show, and you now bring us a weekly show called Ladies of Crypto, because as we were growing this channel, we realized that, I apologize, I've got an alert over your face. Let me get rid of the alert. Sorry about that. We have got a large number of our audience, 13.8% ladies, and they were left out because all the crypto bro type channels, they have about 1% ladies because they're not really keen on looking at a guy with larking around in the dark with a mask on, or what very often happens. And you bring a very fresh new look with all your wisdom and connections that you obviously have with Ladies of Crypto. This is the event, folks. It's every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern time, every Thursday, and you can join Casey for this event. So do join her as she brings a whole new perspective, a different way of looking at things, and it really does bring a fresh look into the space of not just crypto, but to investing as a whole. It sounds crazy. You think, well, surely ladies just look at it the same way as guys. Buy low, sell high, read a balance sheet. I mean, that's not rocket science, but it really isn't as simple as that. There is a different way of looking at things, and you do provide a great show. So I'm going to give everyone the link to the next show, which is on this Thursday, the day after the FOMC report. And what I'd like to do is, Casey, if you could introduce what you do on that show and what people might see on Thursday, if everyone can just click on that link while Casey's doing it. And what you can do is go and click the like, go and click the reminder, and you can just drop into the chat here. Can you see the live chat on the right-hand side? And you can leave a little comment here saying, whatever you like. Did you enjoy today's interview? And, what you'd like to see on the show. And you can get yourself in there. So anyway, Casey, so just tell us about what we're likely to get from you on these the Ladies of Crypto every Thursday. And what comes next?
What comes next is I'm trying to bring a fresh perspective on building wealth together and learning together, but also by looking at a combined strategies. Like, women tend to think long term and perform better over the long term. They're less risk. They are more concerned about risk, and they are very strategic about it. And men bring some really great strengths, and usually that is seeing shorter term opportunity and being able to be decisive and jump on it. And I believe that real wealth is built when we combine those. Plus, this is what is coming in our monetary system and investing. I mean, crypto is not going away at this point. It's stronger than it has ever been. And so I think it's really important to learn that, and bringing more women into that space benefits the entire space, brings new innovation, new strategies, combined strategies, and I think everyone can grow wealth together.
I totally agree with you. Casey, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today and bringing us this information. It's fascinating to believe that this could happen, and I'm really excited about what comes next. What do you think, if it does happen, the timescale might be for this?
So that's a really good question. I believe when it happens, it's going to happen quickly. Now, I can't tell you if that's going to be a month from now, 6 months from now, or longer. But I think that if we have been tracking this, which signs point to we have, as the United States of America has been tracking this, and if that happens, it's going to happen quickly. The reason I think it's not being talked about more now is because if you think about this, if now assets can be attached at the state level to alter ego entities and then attached at the state level, I think the United States will want to have everything really nailed down and understand exactly where custody is and be ready to seize it before anyone else can attach it to legal claims against the state of Venezuela, before any other countries can, because then you're going to have a race to attachment, right? Like in legal terms for assets. And so I think that I can't give you an exact timeline, but I believe that it's coming, and I believe that when it does, it's going to happen really quickly because legally things are already going to be attached and ready to seize.
Fascinating. Well, talking about happening quickly, what's your thoughts? You know my thoughts are on the carry trade, the unwind. These aren't things we rush into. You can't say it's happening tomorrow at 3 o'clock. But there's so many things with the amount of debt, with bonds rising, with the reversal of policy in Japan, who finances all the debt really for bonds. $20 trillion is tied up in the yen carry trade. And I was talking to Sensei just before we came on air, who's just had a conversation with Michael Burry. And Michael Burry agrees that the yen carry trade is coming. The unwind, the major crash. I've sold all my positions. I've made a great deal of money this year. I've beaten the market. I've beaten Buffett percentage-wise, obviously, not money-wise, percentage-wise. And I'm all in SGov right now, short-term treasury bills. And this morning I had a few people go, because one of my favorite assets at the moment is Coca-Cola, and it started to run and people went, oh, you're missing out. And look what happened. Straight up, straight back down again. Okay. People are taking money out of the piggy banks all over the place. It's going to happen, in my opinion. We're going to have one of the biggest crashes in history. I have some very good sources. I know you have great sources. I have a White House press room contact, friends at Robinhood, Bank of America, Ripple, one new acquaintance at Coca-Cola. And I'm very confident we're going to get a major pullback, and most people will miss it. The issue is they'll be over-leveraged, like the hedge funds have over-leveraged, because when we have this free money, if not negative money, in fact, and then you could get a 4.5% bond from US, it's free money. You can borrow money at zero and buy a bond and 4.5%, 5% free money. So they got greedy with that idea, thinking, right, well, I'll leverage it as well. Now we have 20 trillion in this trade. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. In my opinion, of course, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do like to read numbers, just like Michael Burry in the film The Big Short just said. He says, well, I can read. Most people don't even look. Or if they do look, they don't want to know. And they don't understand what the mechanics is. Very often people think the S&P 500, that's the friendly ETF. It's there to help good old Americans, save for their pensions. When the S&P is simply no more than a rating agency. It's there paid by other businesses to rate them. And that's it. And they compile a list. That's all it is. Nevertheless, it's a great index, a great collection of businesses, but it's not there as your friend. There's nothing safe. No asset is safe. No asset is there. Join a fan club and so on and so forth. Even the good old short-term treasury bill, which is regarded as zero risk and cash. It's only zero risk unless the US government went bankrupt, and we can all assume that's not going to happen, but anything is possible. So how are you positioning yourself? Are you expecting a unwind? You're not bothered, or a bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both. I definitely do. I mean, the unwind is going to have obviously impact on global markets, not just here in the US. It can't not at that level, but also looking at the longer term for this year, especially in things like, we talked about XRP earlier. If you look at anything that Brad Garlinghouse said in Davos, I think he's predicting a good year for XRP.
I agree.
Right. And so I think that a lot of what's going on is shifting. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but it's shifting the way that money moves around the world. It's shifting the banking structure, the centralized banking structure. And I don't know, maybe we start issuing treasury bonds that are backed by, Bitcoin or backed by XRP. I think that a lot of this has to happen to be able to get on stable ground again, because we haven't been on stable ground in a long time. We, as just people, not a part of these big banking systems, we are being front run by the banks. We're being front run by centralized banking too. And I think that we have an opportunity here to kind of take some of that power back as individuals with the way that this new system is going to unfold.
Casey, thank you for your time, not just for today, but the time you spent with Sensei putting this story together. It's the first of many interviews like this where we go undercover. Thank you. It's been absolutely fantastic. We all look forward to joining you on Thursday for your Ladies of Crypto event. It's very popular. You've blown out of the gate. It'll be your fourth show. Every show is better than the last. In every aspect. Your audience love you. We all love watching you and the information that you bring. So we're going to wrap this up. I've got a bit of a surprise for everybody. If you stay right where you are, we're going to this. Sensei has an XRP 50% crash fire sale. If Sensei's watching, I would like to say, it's a little in-joke amongst me and the team, love the image. Sensei, love the face, love the face. Do you know what I mean, folks? Does anybody know what I mean? Anyway, it'll take you there live right now. Sensei has pinned it in the chat. This will automatically take you there. You don't want to miss it. It's about to begin. I'm going to make sure that you all have the link as well. Manually, you can click on it. But Casey, you've got about a minute. Give me your final thoughts as we wrap this up of what you'd like to leave the audience with from a crypto point of view.
I think crypto is really just going to expand so much in the future. Blockchain in general, the innovation in blockchain, taking over real world assets, bringing them on chain. There's so many pieces to this that are going to be the innovation of the future. And I think that if we're really looking, we can see what's coming and we can invest accordingly. And I think we're really early. So I think it's just going to get better and better from here.
Thank you, Casey. Stay on the line. Just mute yourself for a moment. I'll be right back to you right after I finish this. There was Casey from Ladies of Crypto bringing us great insights. Her and Sensei spent the weekend putting all those facts together. They had to be verified, checked, and validated to bring you reliable, useful information. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay right where you are. We have the link now taking you directly. It'll automatically take you there. Plus the link is in the chat. Sensei has a XRP 50% crash fire sale. What does he mean? What's coming up next? I just gave you a little glimmer of it. It starts in 60 seconds from now. Simply click on the link or stay right where you are. It's also pinned to the top. For those watching later, I'll put it here. You like that? There'll be something here. And there'll be something here. It's not there right now, but it'll be there later. That's it from me. That was the first of our Martyn Lucas Investor Investigates Undercover. I hope you've enjoyed the series. This is the first one. There'll be many more of these. Lots of guests I want to interview and bring on the show. Bringing you thoughts that open your mind, take you deep into the subject. And if anything, just get you to think of the possibilities. What, if, and why. That's it from me. Now enjoy Sensei's event. It's about to begin. Until we meet again later on this afternoon, the closing bell. Until then, as always, take care of yourselves and each other.